Well, if you have doubts about your personal journey or your professional career, if you might have more questions than answers, if you do agree with Peter Drucker that self-realization and community are important needs, if you have empathy for those who are less fortunate, if you cannot cope with violence, injustice, or stupidity, if you are looking for meaning, if you are looking, I think, for a real purpose, if you are searching for your place in the universe, then it might be the best moment to become a social entrepreneur. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I will briefly tell you my journey in 5 chapters. I'm from Germany. I grew up in a small village in Germany, middle-class family, nothing special. And I was premature. That means I was born 6 weeks, let's say, before the date, so to say. And I had a very, very, low life expectancy when I was a child. And on top, I had to spend lots of time in hospitals. And I could not speak properly because my audition went wrong. And my mother took care of me, but I think I had a very, very violent brother. And all the time when my mother moved out the, this room, my brother treated me pretty bad. In my neighborhood, there was a boy. I was maybe 6, 7 years old, and this guy had Down syndrome. But in these days, there were no Down syndrome. This was just the fool. When the fool came out of his house, he was all the time kicked and beaten. And I was standing in the crowd and was looking at it, and I felt embarrassed. I felt pain that this guy, the weakest one, was all the time, beaten. And of course, I was very ashamed about myself because I did not speak up and say, "Hey guys, why you are, kicking and beating the fool?" I had a shock. When I was 13 years old, I was quite amazed about German military. So I knew all the battles from Second World War. I was amazed about the Germans and the German, the German story of the Second World War. And one day there was a documentary on TV, and all the soldiers were marching, I don't know what, to Russia or to Poland, I have no idea. And in a moment there was a sequence where Jewish people were deported on the trains to the camps, and we all know what happened. In wartime, people were killed in an industrial way. And then I said, pointing on the screen to my mother, who was sitting behind me, and they, the Jews, are the guilty ones that we, the Germans, lost the war. And my mother started crying, and she told me, "Listen, we have a Jewish family, and they were all killed." And on top, I knew that my father's side were absolutely strong Nazi supporters. So when I was 13 years old, it was really, a life-turning moment in my life, because I understood that how this could happen, that I'm somehow belonging, to part of the family who were, exterminated, and on the other side, they were supporters. And from 13 to 30, I spent exclusively all my time to understand what leads people, to exclude, what leads people to exterminate. I studied history, I visited lots of concentration camps, I spoke to survivors. I was absolutely eager to understand how this could happen. I'm a PhD about it, and when I finished my studies, I started working for a radio station. I was embarrassed. When I was working in the radio station, I was asked one day by my director if I can imagine a work training for a journalist who had a car accident and lost his eyesight. I had no idea about blindness and no about disability. I just said, "Oh my gosh, 28 years old, car accident, blind, what is life without eyesight? Nothing." And I met him, and I was literally blown away about his optimism, about his way, to cope with the situation. And he really, 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 turned my life, my understanding. And then, of course, I was so embarrassed because when I judged so so surely that this is not a valuable life. It's my family history and with all my education, how others might judge. And this was exactly the turning point in my life when I said, okay, I have to do something. But what to do? You know, when I met this blind guy for the first time, I understood there is a transformation out of this encounter. And while I studied, I came across with Martin Buber. He's a German Jewish philosopher. And there's one sentence, it's somehow my mantra. And he says, the only way to learn is by encounter. And when I understood, wow, there is a way, I think, to bring people together, to set up a platform, that they have an open exchange, then maybe I think the relation might change. And the idea was very simple. I said, okay, wow, it's so simple, Heinecke. In the dark, the blind people are sighted because they are used out of their daily situation, I think, to maneuver without eyesight. And of course, in the dark, the sighted people are blind because they are usually not used, I think, to walk around in darkness and not to rely on their eyesight. So this was, in fact, I think, the day of birth of Dialogue in the Dark 25 years ago. But you know, I think it's quite a challenge, I think, to imagine an enterprise, to imagine a business, so to say, when you want to sell darkness. Who wants to sell darkness? Darkness is universal. Nobody wants to pay for it. 1 kilo, 2 kilo, on one piece or I don't know. And then, secondly, I think, who wants to employ blind people? In fact, nobody. But if you combine two impossibilities, then sometimes the possibility came up. It was exactly what happened. But it took me, I think, really, more than 10 years, I think, to really bring it up. And now I think we are in 37 countries, and we have 8,000 people, blind people employed. Millions of people went through this, let's say, experiment. And it's very, very powerful and very, very impactful. And I'm very, very glad, in fact, that I could make it. Dialogue in the Dark is absolutely my life, as I have to admit. And I think since the day when I was appointed to be an Ashoka Fellow, of course, I gained an identity. It was, for me, the most important, let's say, gift I got, because when you do something selling darkness and try to push people to employ blind people, then you feel somehow pretty lonely, because people don't understand what you're really doing. Are you a charity? Are you a social worker? But I was somehow a businessman, an entrepreneur, so I never had an idea, I think, to start up a charity, because I believed, in the entrepreneurial spirit. I believed in the blend of market mechanism with a social mission, and this brought me to Dialogue in the Dark, and it keeps me alive. When people ask me what is Dialogue in the Dark, I all the time say, well, it's not about to simulate blindness. It's not about, I think, to understand how the blind people, let's say, coping different situations, how they walk around, how they perceive life. It's much more about the culture. It's much more about a non-visual culture. And the beneficiaries are much more, in my understanding, not the blind people. They are much more, I think, the non-blind people, because they gain a lot out of the experience. They dialogue with themselves. They understand much more about the hidden potential. They got a completely new spectrum, let's say, beyond eyesight. And they really gain a lot out of this. And of course, I think there's a huge transformation from fear to fun. When you enter to this room, of course, you're completely lost. But at the end of the day, thanks to the beauty of our body, the beauty of our senses, I think we can tackle and we can cope with the situations. This picture, what you see here, is from Mexico. Mexico just next door in Monterrey. And it shows exactly what Dialogue in the Dark is about. I think it's really, how to say, to unite two worlds which usually have no chance for an exchange. And I like it very much to see this blind girl and you see this sighted girl, the blind girl with a cane, and of course there is this heart, which, how to say, stands for love, and I would say for empathy and for understanding. Well, if you, in a way, I think, don't know, in fact, if you cannot find, I think, your place in the universe, and I know it took me really a long time until I knew exactly what I have to do and what I can do and where is my best place, I can only, let's say, suggest create your own, you know? And everybody will say it never work, it will never work, but believe me, I think it can work. But what is really important, I think, that you have to start now. Maybe you don't have a clear idea what you're going to do, but if you have, I think, all these questions, if you have a certain, how to say, if you have empathy, if you cannot understand why people are in such a bad shape, then definitely, I think, you have a chance to do it. And if I succeed with my darkness and my blind people, then I think, I'm sure you can do it much better. Thank you very much. Thank you.